The cottage at the edge of the forest was small, cold, and exactly what Irina Petrova deserved. At least, that was what the villagers of Podurea Neagra seemed to think. She had arrived 6 months ago with 2 trunks, a letter of introduction from a London publisher, and a reputation that preceded her like a storm cloud. Russian, unmarried, living alone, drawing plants like some kind of witch. The whispers followed her through the market square whenever she ventured into the village for supplies. The Orthodox priest crossed himself when she passed. Mothers pulled their children close, as though whatever curse afflicted her might be contagious. Irina had learned to ignore it. She had fled one exile in St. Petersburg, only to find another in Transylvania, but at least here no one knew the specific details of her scandal. They simply knew she was wrong somehow, foreign and female and unaccompanied by husband or father or brother. That was enough. Her work kept her busy during the daylight hours. The Royal Botanical Society in London paid her well for detailed illustrations of rare Carpathian plants: monkshood, wolfsbane, belladonna. The poisonous ones grew best in these mountains, and Irina had developed an expertise in rendering their deadly beauty on paper. Her illustrations would appear in scientific journals, her name reduced to initials so that learned men could admire the work without knowing it came from a woman's hand. She did not mind. The work was enough. The solitude was bearable. Almost bearable. The black cat had appeared on her doorstep on an October evening, thin and bedraggled from the autumn rain. Irina had never been particularly fond of animals, but something about the creature's steady amber gaze had compelled her to open the door. She had fed it scraps from her dinner, expecting it to leave come morning. It had not left. Instead, it had claimed the cottage as its own, prowling through the rooms with the confidence of a landlord inspecting property. It slept on her bed, sat on her desk while she worked, and watched her with an intelligence that sometimes unnerved her. "You are a strange beast," she told it one evening in November, speaking Russian because there was no one to hear and judge her accent. "Most cats have the decency to pretend they are simple creatures. You do not even try." The cat had simply blinked at her, slow and deliberate, before returning its attention to the window. Irina had named it Morsego, Romanian for bat, because the irony amused her. A black cat that appeared only at night, disappearing before dawn as reliably as clockwork. She assumed it had another home somewhere, another person who fed it during the day. The thought should have bothered her, but instead it was oddly comforting. Even her cat had someone else. She was not trapping another living thing in her isolation. Winter came early to the Carpathians that year. By December, snow had buried the cottage up to the windowsills. Irina worked by lamplight, her fingers stiff with cold despite the fire she kept burning. The British publisher wanted 12 more illustrations by February. She had completed 7. Morsego had become more present as the weather worsened, arriving earlier each evening and staying longer. Sometimes Irina woke in the night to find him curled against her side, radiating a warmth that seemed impossible for such a small creature. She had stopped questioning it. Questioning led to hoping, and hoping led to disappointment. January brought the pneumonia. Irina woke one morning unable to breathe properly, her lungs feeling as though they were filled with broken glass. She managed to start a fire and brew tea before collapsing back into bed. The fever came next, turning the world into a hazy nightmare of heat and cold, clarity and delirium. She was aware of Morsego appearing that evening, of his weight on the bed beside her. She tried to tell him to leave, that whatever sickness she had might spread to him, but the words would not form properly. Time became fluid. She was burning and freezing simultaneously. At some point she was aware of a cool cloth on her forehead, of hands lifting her head to press a cup to her lips. The tea tasted bitter, medicinal. She drank it anyway, too weak to resist. "You need to fight this," a voice said, male and speaking Russian with an accent she could not place. "I have not sat on your desk for 6 months listening to your depressing monologues, only to watch you die now." Irina tried to open her eyes but managed only a flutter of lashes. The fever was pulling her down again, into depths that felt dangerously close to permanent. She dreamed then, vivid and strange. She dreamed that Morsego stood on his hind legs, his body elongating, shifting. She dreamed of bones cracking and reforming, of fur receding to reveal pale skin. She dreamed of amber eyes in a human face, sharp and beautiful and utterly inhuman. She dreamed of a man where her cat had been, and even in delirium she knew this was impossible. When she woke, it was dark. The fever had broken, leaving her weak and soaked with sweat. A lamp burned on the bedside table, turned low. And sitting in the chair beside her bed was a man. He was perhaps 28, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders and those same amber eyes she knew from Morsego's face. He wore clothing that looked expensive, but outdated, the style at least 2 decades old. His hands were folded in his lap, and he watched her with the same patient intensity her cat had always displayed. "You are awake," he said in Russian. "Good. You have been unconscious for 2 days." Irina's mouth was too dry to speak. The man, noticing, poured water from a pitcher and held it to her lips. She drank, her mind racing. There was a stranger in her cottage, a man. She should scream, should demand he leave, should reach for something to defend herself with. But those eyes, she knew those eyes. "Morsego," she whispered, and it was not a question. The man smiled, small and sad. "You named me after a bat. I suppose I should be grateful you did not call me Rat. This is not possible. And yet, here I am." He set the cup aside and leaned back in the chair. "I am Dmitri Vasile. I am 447 years old. I am a vampire, which you will have already concluded given the evidence. And I am cursed to spend the hours between 6 in the evening and midnight as a cat, which I imagine is the more surprising revelation." Irina closed her eyes, then opened them again. He was still there, solid and impossible. "I am still feverish." "This is delirium." "You are not delirious. Your fever broke 12 hours ago. You are weak, but recovering." Dmitri stood and moved to the window, putting distance between them. "I understand this is difficult to accept. Take your time. You have been in my home for 6 months. Yes. You have slept in my bed. As a cat, yes. Would you prefer I had done so in this form? That seems far more scandalous." Despite everything, Irina felt a hysterical laugh bubble up. "This is insane. You are telling me that my cat is a vampire who turns into a man at midnight." "Precisely, though technically I am a man who turns into a cat, then back into a man. The curse is quite specific about the timing." Irina tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Dmitri was there instantly, supporting her back, arranging pillows. His hands were cold but gentle, and the casual efficiency spoke of long practice. "How long have you been cursed?" 200 years, give or take." He stepped back once she was settled. "A witch offered me her daughter to turn into a vampire. I refused. She took exception to my rejection. So she cursed you to be a cat. She cursed me to be a beast until someone could love me in both forms. Her exact words were that I had proven myself to be an animal in my rejection of her daughter, and so an animal I would become." Dmitri's expression was wry. Witches are quite literal when angered. Irina's head was spinning, and not from illness. "You expect me to believe this. I expect you to observe and conclude. You are a woman of science, Irina Petrova. You draw plants with such accuracy that London scholars praise your work while never knowing your name. You document and analyze. So document this. Analyze the evidence before you." He was right, and Irina hated that he was right. She had been trained to observe, to question, to seek rational explanations. But what rational explanation existed for a man who appeared in her cottage, speaking of curses and transformations? "Prove it," she said. "Now. The sun has not yet risen. Prove what you are." Dmitri studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He picked up a letter opener from her desk, the one she used for cutting pages in new books. Without hesitation, he drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and viscous. Irina watched as the wound closed before her eyes, flesh knitting together seamlessly until only unblemished skin remained. I am dead, Irina. I have been dead since 1458. My body does not function as yours does. I do not need to breathe, though I do from habit. My heart does not beat. I do not age, and I cannot die except through very specific means. Irina's scientific mind grappled with the impossibility while her eyes provided undeniable evidence. The transformation. Can you control it? No. At 6 in the evening, I become a cat, whether I will it or not. At midnight, I return to this form. At dawn, I must find shelter from the sun or burn. These are the parameters of my existence. For 200 years, I have searched for a way to break the curse. The witch said someone must love me in both forms. I have tried everything. Women who loved their pets but feared vampires. Vampires who respected my power but had no use for cats. Always one or the other. Never both. He turned back to the window, his profile sharp against the darkness outside. Then 6 months ago, I was traveling through these mountains as a cat, as I do most evenings. I came to your cottage, and I saw you through the window. You were crying while you worked, tears falling onto an illustration of Nightshade. I watched you wipe them away and continue, your hand steady despite the grief. And I thought, here is someone who understands loneliness. Perhaps she will understand me. Irina felt something tight in her chest. So you stayed. I stayed. I sat on your desk and watched you work. I slept beside you when the nightmares came. I listened to you talk to yourself in Russian about your exile, about the scandal that drove you from St. Petersburg, about the emptiness of your days. And I found that for the first time in 2 centuries, I did not feel alone. You should have told me. When you thought I was simply a stray, when you had begun to rely on my presence but still believed me to be a dumb animal, when you loved the cat I appeared to be. He looked at her then, and his eyes were ancient and tired. I am a coward, Irina. I should have revealed myself long ago, but I was selfish. I wanted to keep this, to keep you, even if it was built on deception. Irina was quiet for a long time. Outside, she could hear the wind howling through the mountains, the same wind that had isolated her here for months. She thought about the scandal in St. Petersburg, about the married professor who had courted her and then abandoned her when his wife discovered their correspondence, about the public humiliation, the loss of her position at the university, the whispers that followed her through every drawing room. She thought about arriving in this village and finding only more rejection, more isolation, more confirmation that she was fundamentally unwelcome in the world. And she thought about the cat who had appeared on her doorstep and chosen to stay. I was not crying because I was sad, she said finally. That day you saw me, I was crying because the nightshade was so beautiful, and I was the only one who would ever see it the way I did. The villagers see only poison. The London scholars see only specimens. But I see the architecture of it, the perfect mathematics of its construction. And it made me realize how completely alone I was in my perception. Dmitri turned from the window. You are not alone in that. I have walked this earth for 4.5 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humans achieve impossible things and destroy beautiful things in equal measure. And I am always alone in my perception because I am the only one who remembers what came before. So we are both exiles then. You from time, me from society. Yes, I suppose we are. The dawn was coming. Irina could see the first hints of gray on the horizon through the window. Dmitri saw it too, tension entering his shoulders. I must go. The sun will rise soon, and I cannot be caught in the open. Where do you go during the day? There is a cave system beneath these mountains. I have made a sanctuary there. I sleep, I read, I wait for evening when I can become the cat again." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I will understand if you do not wish me to return. You did not agree to share your home with a vampire. You agreed to feed a stray cat. The deception was mine, and if you want me gone, I will go." Irina looked at him, this impossible man who was also the cat who had been her only companion. "Come back tonight. We will talk more. I have questions." Something flickered in his eyes. Relief, perhaps, or hope. "As you wish. Rest today. You are still weak." He left, moving with a speed and silence that was distinctly inhuman. Irina listened to the door close, then the complete absence of footsteps, as though he had simply vanished. She lay back against the pillows and tried to process everything that had happened. A vampire. A curse. A man who had spent 200 years searching for a love that could break his bonds. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was also, she realized, the most interesting thing that had happened to her in years. She slept through most of the day, waking only to tend the fire and eat some of the soup that had been left warming on the stove. Dimitri's work, she assumed. The thought of him, in human form, cooking in her kitchen while she was unconscious, should have been disturbing. Instead, it was oddly domestic. As 6 o'clock approached, Irina found herself watching the door. She told herself she was being foolish. It would be a cat that entered, if anything entered at all. The man, Dimitri, had been feverish hallucination after all. Then the door opened, though she had not heard any knock. A black cat padded inside, shook snow from its paws, and looked up at her with amber eyes. "Hello, Morcego," Irina said, testing. The cat's tail flicked in what might have been annoyance. It jumped up onto the bed and settled near her feet, radiating that impossible warmth. "I suppose we wait for midnight then." The cat purred. The hours passed slowly. Irina tried to work on her illustrations but found she could not focus. Her eyes kept drifting to the cat on her bed, to the clock on the mantel ticking toward midnight. She had 100 questions forming, a scientist's need to understand and categorize this impossibility. When the clock struck midnight, she watched carefully. One moment there was a cat. The next, there was a shimmer in the air, a distortion like heat rising from summer stone. Then Dimitri stood beside her bed, solid and real, stretching as though waking from sleep. "That never stops being disorienting," he said. "You would think after 2 centuries I would be accustomed to it. Does it hurt? No, it simply is, like breathing for you. An automatic process." He looked at her appraisingly. "You have color in your cheeks today. The pneumonia is passing. Thanks to your intervention, what did you give me to drink? An herbal tea. Yarrow, elderflower, thyme. Recipes I learned from a healer in Prague in 1654. Modern medicine has its place, but the old ways still work for fevers." Irina gestured to the chair. "Sit, tell me everything. I want to understand." So he sat, and he told her. He told her about being born in 1461 in what was now Romania, but had then been Wallachia. About living through the terror of Vlad the Impaler's reign, about surviving only to be turned into a vampire during the Ottoman siege of 1458. About the centuries that followed, the slow accumulation of knowledge and loss. He told her about his first family, all dead from plague. About the lovers he had taken over the years, none lasting because humans aged, and he did not. About the loneliness that accumulated like snow, beautiful at first, but eventually suffocating. And he told her about the witch in 1708, about her daughter who had begged to be turned, to be made immortal, about his refusal, not from cruelty, but from experience. He knew what immortality cost. He would not inflict it on someone so young. "She was 18, Dimitri said quietly. "The same age as my own daughter had been when the plague took her. I could not do it, and her mother made me pay for that mercy with 200 years of isolation." Irina listened to all of it, her scientific mind cataloging information while her heart ached for the weight of all those years. When he finished, She asked the question that had been growing in her mind. The curse requires someone to love you in both forms. But how does the curse know? How does it measure love? I do not know. I assume it is when someone declares it, perhaps, or when they demonstrate it through action. The witch was not specific about the mechanism. That seems poorly designed for a curse. Dmitri laughed, genuine amusement lighting his face. I have thought the same thing many times. Witches are powerful, but they are not always precise. They talked through the night, and Irina found herself relaxing in his presence. He was educated, well-read, and possessed a dry wit that matched her own. He had opinions about art and science, about politics and philosophy. He had met Voltaire once and found him tedious. He had attended the first performance of Mozart's Requiem and wept. As dawn approached, he stood reluctantly. I must go again. Tomorrow night, Irina said. Come back, we can continue talking. You truly want me to return. You are the most interesting thing that has happened to me since I left St. Petersburg, and given that my life there ended in scandal and disgrace, that is saying something. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. During the day, Irina worked on her illustrations, slowly regaining her strength. At 6 in the evening, Morsego appeared, keeping her company in feline form. At midnight, Dmitri returned, and they talked until dawn forced him to leave. He helped her with her work, his centuries of observation providing insights into plant behavior that no modern botanist could match. She showed him her illustrations, and he praised them with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely understood the skill involved. You should sign them with your full name, he said one night, studying her rendering of monkshood. This is art as much as science. You deserve recognition. The Royal Society would stop publishing them if they knew a woman drew them. Then the Royal Society is full of fools, as most institutions are. Sometimes they talked about serious things, philosophy, history, the nature of existence. Sometimes they talked about nothing at all, simply sharing space and silence. Irina found herself looking forward to 6 o'clock, to midnight, to the hours when she was not alone. She also found herself looking at Dmitri differently. Not as a curiosity or an impossibility, but as a man. A beautiful, complicated, ancient man who had somehow chosen her cottage, her company, her isolated existence. It was in February when she realized the full extent of her feelings. She was working on an illustration of wolfsbane, and Morsego was asleep on her desk as usual. She reached out absently to scratch behind his ears, and he purred, pressing into her touch. I love you, you ridiculous creature, she murmured in Russian, not really thinking about the words. The cat went very still. Then midnight struck, and Dmitri was there, standing so close she could feel the cold radiating from his body. Did you mean that? He asked, his voice carefully controlled. Irina looked up at him, at amber eyes that held centuries of hope and fear. Yes, I love Morsego. My strange cat who is not really a cat. My companion in this isolation. But do you love me? Not the cat, the vampire, the monster. You are not a monster. I am dead, Irina. I drink blood to sustain this form. I have killed many times to survive. I am everything humans fear in the darkness. Irina stood, setting down her pen. You are also kind, patient, brilliant. You saved my life when you could have simply left. You respect my work when the entire scientific establishment dismisses it. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me feel less alone. That is not the same as love. No, she agreed, it is not. Love is more complicated. Love is looking at you and seeing both the cat who curled beside me during nightmares and the man who shares his 400 years of wisdom. Love is wanting you here, in whatever form you take. Love is choosing you. Dmitri reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he cupped her face in cold hands. I have waited 200 years to hear someone say those words and mean them. I am afraid to believe this is real. Then let me prove it. She kissed him, rising onto her toes to close the distance between them. His lips were cool but not unpleasant, and after a moment of shock, he responded with a hunger that spoke of centuries of denial. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer, and Irina felt a heat in her chest that had nothing to do with fever. When they broke apart, both breathing hard despite only one of them needing air, Dmitri pressed his forehead to hers. "The curse," he said. "I do not feel any different. Perhaps it requires more time. Perhaps your declaration was not specific enough." "Or perhaps," Irina said practically, "we simply continue as we are and see what happens. I am a scientist. I believe in observation and experimentation." He laughed, a sound of pure joy. "You are remarkable." "I am practical. Now you have 3 more hours until dawn. Help me finish this wolfsbane illustration. You said you knew how it grows in moonlight." They worked side by side, and Irina found she was happier than she had been in years. Perhaps the curse would break. Perhaps it would not. Either way, she had found something rare: connection, understanding, companionship, love, in whatever form it took. March brought an unexpected visitor to Padureia Nigra. Father Constantine arrived on a gray afternoon, his black cassock covered in road dust, a silver cross prominent around his neck. He went first to the Orthodox Church, spending hours in conference with the local priest. By evening, the entire village was whispering, "A vampire hunter. Here." Irina heard the news when she ventured into the village for supplies. The baker's wife, who usually ignored her, leaned close with a gleam in her eyes. "They say he has hunted the creatures for 40 years. They say he can smell devil's work from a mile away. They say he has killed over 100 of the undead." Irina kept her expression neutral, purchased her bread, and left. But her heart was racing. She hurried home, arriving just as the sun was setting. Morcego appeared moments later, as he always did. But tonight, when he jumped onto the table, Irina knelt before him. "There is a vampire hunter in the village, a priest named Constantine. You need to be careful." The cat's ears flattened. At midnight, Dmitri materialized with tension in every line of his body. "Constantine. I know that name. He has been hunting me for 3 decades. Why? Because 30 years ago, I refused to turn his sister when she was dying of consumption. He believes I condemned her to death, rather than damnation, and he has sworn to destroy me for it." Dmitri paced the small cottage, agitated in a way she had never seen. "He is intelligent, relentless, and he has killed many of my kind. If he is here, it is because he has tracked me somehow. You said you are careful. You use the caves during the day. You avoid the village. I am always careful, but he is very good at what he does." Dmitri stopped pacing and looked at her. "Irina, you need to distance yourself from me. If he connects you to a vampire, you will be in danger." "I am already in danger simply by existing as I do. An unmarried woman living alone, rejected by the community. If this Constantine is looking for evidence of witchcraft or devil worship, I am an easy target. Then go, pack your things and leave this place. Go to Budapest or Vienna, somewhere safe. And leave you to face him alone? I think not. Irina, this is not a story. This is not romance. Constantine will kill me if he can, and he will kill anyone he believes has been corrupted by my presence. I am asking you to save yourself." She crossed her arms. "No. No. No. You saved my life when I was dying. You have given me companionship when I had none. You have shared 400 years of knowledge and experience with me. I am not abandoning you to a fanatic with a cross." Dmitri looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met. I am Russian. We are all stubborn. Now, tell me everything about this Constantine so we can plan accordingly." They spent the next week preparing. Dmitri showed her the cave entrance, hidden behind a waterfall frozen solid by winter. He taught her the signs of vampire hunters, the protective wards they used, the tactics they employed. Irina, in turn, used her scientific mind to develop countermeasures. "Garlic is supposedly effective," she said one night, reading from a book on folklore. "But you said it was merely unpleasant." "Unpleasant to smell, yes. But it does not harm me. Most of the old legends are exaggerated or simply wrong." "So the cross and holy water?" "The cross only works if wielded by someone with genuine faith. Constantine qualifies. Holy water is simply blessed water. It will not kill me, but it burns like acid." "Fire." "Yes, fire is the true danger, and beheading. Those are the methods that actually work." Constantine made his move on a night when the moon was dark. Irina was working late. Morsego curled on her desk as usual. She heard the commotion outside just before midnight. Voices. The priest's voice, loud and commanding. "I know you harbor the creature. Come out and repent, or be judged alongside it." Irina looked at Morsego, whose fur was standing on end. "Stay hidden. Do not transform where he can see you." She opened the door to find Constantine flanked by a dozen villagers holding torches. The priest was tall and gaunt, with eyes that burned with righteous fury. "Miss Petrova, I have been observing you. A cat that appears only at night. A woman who lives alone and practices arcane arts. The pattern is clear. I illustrate plants for a British publication. That is hardly arcane. You consort with the undead. Your soul is in peril. My soul is my own business, Father, as is my home. I must ask you to leave." "I think not." Constantine gestured, and two villagers moved forward with a net. "We will search your cottage. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear." They pushed past her, torches held high. Irina's heart hammered. Morsego was inside. If they found him, if midnight struck while they were searching, Dmitri would be exposed and helpless. The clock on the mantel read 11:58. "There is nothing here," one villager said, poking through her workspace. "Just drawings and books." "Search thoroughly," Constantine commanded. "The creature hides itself well." 11:59. A villager moved toward the bedroom where Morsego was hiding under the bed. Irina stepped in front of the door. "That is my private chamber. You have no right." "I have every right given to me by God," Constantine replied. "Move aside." Midnight struck. From the bedroom came a sound. Not a cat's cry, but something else. A shifting, a transformation that sounded like wind through trees. Constantine's eyes widened. There, the creature shows itself. He shoved Irina aside and burst into the bedroom. What he found was not Dmitri, but Morsego, still in cat form. Because Dmitri had learned, in that moment of crisis, to control the transformation. The curse was breaking. "It is just a cat," the villager said, confused. "No, I heard it, the sound of devil's work." Constantine grabbed for Morsego, who hissed and darted between his legs, out into the main room and out the open door into the night. Constantine followed, and Irina followed Constantine, terror and hope warring in her chest. The priest was fast, but Morsego was faster, leading him away from the cottage into the forest where trees grew thick and snow lay deep. Irina ran after them, ignoring the cold, ignoring the villagers who called for her to stop. She crashed through underbrush, following the sounds of pursuit until she burst into a clearing. Constantine stood in the center, surrounded by a circle of salt and iron filings. Morsego was at the edge of the circle, unable to cross the barrier. The vampire hunter held a torch in one hand and a wooden stake in the other. "Show yourself, creature. Face judgment in your true form." And Dmitri did. He transformed, not because midnight compelled him, but because he chose to. One moment there was a cat. The next, a man stood in the snow, bare-chested and beautiful and completely unafraid. "Hello, Constantine. It has been a long time." "Dmitri Vasile, I have searched for you for 30 years. And now you have found me. What do you intend to do?" "Destroy you, as I should have done when you condemned Maria to death. I did not condemn her. I refused to transform her into what I am. There is a difference. You are an abomination, you and all your kind. You have no right to exist. Dmitri looked at Irina, who stood at the edge of the clearing, then back at Konstantin. Perhaps you are right. I have lived 400 years, most of them alone, most of them wondering if my existence has any purpose. I have killed to survive. I have watched everyone I have ever cared for die or leave. I am tired, Konstantin. So very tired. Then accept God's mercy and die. No, Irina said, stepping forward. I will not allow it. Both men looked at her. Konstantin with contempt, Dmitri with alarm. Irina, go back to the cottage. I will not. If you want to kill him, priest, you will have to go through me first. Konstantin's lip curled. You are corrupted by the creature. Your soul is already lost. My soul is intact, and I know what I'm doing. This man, this vampire, saved my life. He has shown me kindness when the entire world showed me rejection. He has given me knowledge, companionship, understanding. He is not an abomination. He is not evil. He is simply trying to survive in a world that fears him. He is undead, an affront to God. Then let God judge him, not you. Irina moved to stand beside Dmitri, inside the salt circle. She took his cold hand in hers. I love him, Father Konstantin. I love him as a man, and I loved him as a cat, and I will love him in whatever form he takes. If that damns me, then I am damned, but I will not let you kill him. Something shifted in the air around them. A warmth, a light, a sensation like chains breaking. Dmitri gasped, his hand tightening around Irina's. The curse, he whispered. It is gone. I can feel it. The binding is broken. Konstantin stepped back, his face pale. This is devil's work. No, Irina said firmly. This is love's work. The same love your sister showed you. The same love you claim your God embodies. You cannot call this evil when it is the most human thing in the world. For a long moment, Konstantin stood frozen. Then he lowered his torch and his stake. I came here to destroy a monster. I find instead, I do not know what I find. You find two people who want only to be left alone, Dmitri said quietly. I did not kill your sister, Konstantin. I simply refuse to curse her as I am cursed, or was cursed. I am sorry for your loss, truly. But hunting me will not bring her back. The priest was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps not. Perhaps I have been driven by grief rather than righteousness. That is something I must examine. He looked at them both. I will leave this place, but know that others of my kind will come eventually. Vampires are always found. We will deal with that when it happens, Irina said. For now, we ask only that you leave us in peace. Konstantin turned and walked back toward the village, taking his torch with him. The clearing fell into darkness, lit only by moonlight and stars. Irina turned to Dmitri. The curse is truly broken. It is. I can feel the difference. The binding that forced me to transform, it is gone. I can control it now. Choose when to be cat or man, or something in between. He pulled her into his arms. You broke it. Your love broke it. Our love broke it, she corrected. You had to choose to trust me, to let me in. That was your part. They stood in the snow, holding each other, and Irina realized they were both crying. Tears for the curse ended, for the centuries of loneliness finished, for the future that suddenly seemed possible. What will you do now? She asked. You can go anywhere, be anything. I will stay here, with you, if you will have me. What kind of question is that? Of course I will have you. I have nothing to offer you, Irina. I am still a vampire. I still cannot walk in sunlight. I still must drink blood to survive. I can give you no children, no normal life. I do not want normal. Normal has never wanted me anyway. I want this. I want you. In whatever form you choose to take. Dmitri kissed her then, deep and desperate, and full of centuries of denied affection. When they broke apart, he asked the question that had been unspoken between them. Would you want to become like me? To take the transformation and live beyond human years? Irina considered it carefully. Not now, I am not ready for that, but ask me again in 20 years, or 30, when I have lived a full human life and am ready to start a new one. I will ask you every year until you say yes, or until you grow old and die, whichever comes first. That seems fair. They walked back to the cottage hand in hand, cat and woman, vampire and scientist, two souls who had found each other in isolation and chose to make that isolation into home. Spring came to the Carpathians, bringing with it warmth and color. Irina's illustrations were published to great acclaim, and the Royal Society began to request more work. She signed them with her full name, and when they protested, she informed them she would be happy to take her work elsewhere. They relented. Dmitri remained with her, sometimes as a man, sometimes choosing the cat form because it amused him to curl in the sun that no longer burned him. The curse's breaking had given him that gift as well. Not immunity to sunlight, but tolerance. He could walk in early morning and late evening without pain. It was enough. They married in a small ceremony attended only by themselves and the forest. No priest would marry them, but they did not need religious sanction. They had something better: choice, understanding, and love that had literally broken curses. Do you regret anything? Dmitri asked her one evening as they sat in the garden she had planted, watching Morsego chase butterflies in his feline form. Not for a moment, do you? Only that I did not find you 200 years sooner. Irina laughed. I was not alive 200 years ago. A minor detail. I would have waited. And as the sun set over the Carpathian Mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Irina Petrova and Dmitri Vasile sat together in their small cottage at the edge of the forest. Two exiles who had found in each other the thing they both had sought: a place to belong.